Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Bharati Karunapatram, Bharati Padabhushanam, Bharati Padmarudam, Bharati Shri Bharati Tirtham Ashraye. Good morning, everyone. This is Nitin Sridhar, and I welcome you all for Advaita Academy's first ever session on Weekend Conversations. Today we have a very special guest, Srimati Archana Raghuram, and who was Executive Director and CEO of United Way Chennai. Very welcome to you, Archana ji. Thank you for coming to our program. Just to give a very brief introduction to our guest today. Prior to her stint with the United Way Chennai, she was also global head of Cognizant CSR program. She was instrumental in setting up the outreach program to 20 countries, taking its growth to 100,000 active volunteers. And she has won many awards. And I will be asking her about that later in the program. And her other interests include blogging, corporate storytelling, social media, as well as video blogging. So again, a very warm welcome to Archana Raghuram ji. And I will straight away jump to our questions. So my first question is, Archana ji, you have had an excellent corporate career, and you were just telling me that you left that part just recently in April. So share us more about your life journey, your education, your corporate stint, as well as why you left it, what the whole thing. It would be wonderful if you share.
Thank you for having me, Nitinji. It's a pleasure having this conversation with you. Basically, I'm an engineer by qualification. I'm a software engineer by qualification. And I joined a corporate job right out of my college. I joined Cognizant, and I was working in Cognizant for 21 years. For the first 11 years, I was in the software line. I was an offshore delivery manager of a large client account in Cognizant. Then after 11 years, I switched to CSR, corporate social responsibility. My journey into this corporate social responsibility itself was, because of, I started blogging about people's good work people are doing within Cognizant for the community, for their, for their culture. I used to write a blog within Cognizant. I had 2 blogs in Cognizant, which were very popular. And in those blogs, I recorded stories of people who were involved in community service and doing a lot of work for their community. So looking at the kind of interest that the organization has in doing this kind of volunteering work, our management, our executive team decided to set up this exclusive volunteering program for Cognizant to enable people to volunteer for causes which they are passionate about. So that's how this outreach program started, and I was charged with heading the program. So we started from scratch with just a set of 5 volunteers, and we grew it to more than 100,000 volunteers across 20 countries, all the countries which Cognizant was operating in. Then 3 years back, I left Cognizant, and then I headed this program. I became the executive director of United Way Chennai. Its focus is enabling corporates to implement CSR project. You are diverting corporate money to causes which are very essential for our country, good causes. So I worked there for 2 years, and then now I've decided to kind of pursue my interests, other interests like writing and culture and temples and philosophy. That's why I stepped down in April.
I believe you won many awards during your corporate life. Can you tell us more about it?
Because the outreach program was, it became the largest corporate volunteering program in the world. It grew to a really phenomenal size, and it kind of was driven ground up. So because of the uniqueness of the program, and because it was one of the kind in the corporate world, I was given the Forbes India Philanthropy Award, which recognizes people who have done exceptional work in field of corporate social responsibility and for the community. Along with me, my co-winners were Nandan Nilekani and Kiran Majumdar Shah and all were awarded in the same forum. And then there is a US magazine called Fast Company. It's a technical magazine. And every year they list a set 100 people who do most creative work, 100 most creative people in business they list. In 2015, I was featured in the list because of the innovative way in which this program was grown and developed. So those are the two awards I'm really proud about. And then I have got other awards here and there, but I think these two I will speak about.
That's wonderful. This CSR is one area. I mean, I think a lot of companies do not concentrate more about. I mean, they do it for the heck of it, like because it is compulsory. But it is wonderful to know that you took it to a very new level. It is simply fantastic. Because we are doing this in the context of Vedanta and we are at Advaita Academy, so let me now come to your interest in Vedanta. What got you interested in Vedanta, and how did your journey in Vedanta start? And have you formally studied Vedanta under a guru, or are you studying it under a guru? And tell about your spiritual aspect of your life, the dharmic aspect of your life. We spoke about the corporate life now. That was more of a vyavaharika thing. So, but what about the dharmika and adhyatmika aspect of your life journey?
Okay, from childhood, I have been we used to attend Bala Vihar and all those sloka classes. But my mother was very interested in Gita and Vedanta. And she used to learn under Swami Paramarthananda ji of Arsha Vidya Gurukulam. So, and she used to take me to Gita classes along with her whenever I had holidays and whenever school was on leave. She used to take me only to Gita classes, not to Upanishads, because she used to think I'm too young for Upanishads. Then around 11th standard, when I was in 11th standard, I started my Upanishad classes under Paramarthananda ji. And, I still remember the first Upanishad I learned, Nitinji. It was such a mind-blowing experience.
Which was it?
Mundaka Upanishad. Mundaka Upanishad was my first Upanishad, and it's my favorite till date. The entire premise of whole world being an illusion, that itself is like something so hard to accept or understand. And moreover, how Upanishads deal with it with such logic and such wonderful deep thought process. I fell in love with Vedanta, and I've still not stopped loving it. It's that love continues forever. I think once you get exposed to Upanishads and Vedanta, it's impossible not to be stuck by it, and it stays with you all your life. And that is my starting journey with Vedanta, and I continue. I've been learning under Paramarthaji forever. I continued till I had my first child, and then I took a few years break, and I continue to learn. Now I'm learning because of the COVID. Swamiji is taking Viveka Chudamani, so we are doing Viveka Chudamani classes online.
You have studied all the Upanishads, all the 10 Upanishads?
No. I have fully studied Mundaka and Kathopanishad, then Mandukya and Brihadaranyaka in bits and pieces, because it takes several years to complete. Complete Upanishad is Mundaka, Kathopanishad, and Tattvabodha is the three things which I've fully learned.
Okay, wonderful. See, we all seekers have who has studied a bit here, a bit there. Vedanta has literally hundreds of thousands of texts written by many acharyas, and we have Upanishads and the Prasthanatraya, of course. But tell me, who is your favorite Vedantic author, and which are your favorite Vedantic texts? I mean, I think every seeker has some kind of some texts appeal to us more than others. In my case, Gaudapadacharya's Mandukya Karika and Sureshwaracharya's Naishkarim Siddhi, or Madhusudana Saraswati's works like his commentary on Gita, that is Gudartha Deepika, or his Bhakti Rasayana. So these specially appeal to me. And so what are the texts that appeal to you, and who are the Vedanta acharyas that you find reading very, very impressive, insightful, and inspiring?
Yeah. See, fundamentally, I've done my learning only through Paramarthaji, through a guru. Independently reading a text, I don't do much. I do it for, more like Puranas, Lalita Sahasranama Bhashyam or Vishnu Sahasranama Bhashyam. I do it independently. But my Vedantic learning and Bhagavad Gita learning has always been through Paramarthaji only. From whatever I've learned, I take notes and I revise those notes. That's how I learn. And if you ask me my favorite text, I can tell you Mundaka, of course, is my favorite because it's my very first Upanishad. And for a long time, when I was young and a teenager, I always thought Upanishads are very fascinating. Other texts are not so interesting. Only Upanishads had that, it was just very intellectually gratifying to learn and read Upanishads. And then as I grew older, I kind of understood there is a lot more to learn and imbibe from Bhagavad Gita. Now I'm again redoing my whole Bhagavad Gita course because I think in day to day, those of us who are in samsara, who have not taken up sannyasa, Bhagavad Gita has lessons for everyday life. So Bhagavad Gita is also my favorite.
What are listeners? I just wanted to add this, that if you have any questions, you can send it in the chat box, especially the question and answer box, and we will take it towards the second half of the session. So to moving forward, what are some of the lessons? It may be from Mundaka or it may be from Bhagavad Gita that you have found very relevant to your daily life. It has somehow influenced your life, your thinking, and inspired you to take up a certain life decisions or certain path. What are some of the important teachings or some of the some shlokas that has affected you most?
Okay. See, for me, like Upanishads, very often people say, why if you have to really get value of Upanishads, you should pursue it. You should be a seeker, a pursuer of liberation. Being in samsara, Upanishads can just be an intellectual pursuit. But Paramarthaji will say, just like, like we have a tambura sthiti when they do music, there is a tambura sthiti which sets the tone of the whole kacheri, right? Like that only in our life, this belief, this remembrance that this whole world is an illusion. It is not real. It should keep running on the background. Then your transactions will become, more, you will have less attachment towards your transaction. And learnings from Gita, I think it's very hard to really say in one or two words. My favorite sloka in Gita is Apurya Manam Achala Pratishtam. How, Krishna says, how a mindset of a sannyasi will be. Just like an ocean which doesn't swell even when all the rivers flow into it, or doesn't deplete when rivers don't come to it. It is always Purna, ever complete. That is the state of mind of a Sthita Prajna. That is my favorite. If you ask me to pick up one favorite verse from Bhagavad Gita, it's a very hard task, but this is something which I always remember, because I think that is something which we should always aspire for, the state of Purnatvam, where nothing external disturbs you. You're complete in yourself and by yourself.
That is true. I mean, the Shanti mantra, the Purnamadaha Purnavidam, the says basically the same thing. Everything is Purna, right? These discussions are very fantastic. So I will come to more specific questions. In the YouTube, you have done a few videos on Hindu devatas, various deities, and what they stand for. And you told me that you are especially interested in understanding this symbolism or a kind of Vedantic interpretation of the deities. And this is something which is very close to me personally. My two books focuses on this, as you know, that the Dakshinamurti one and the other is the Chandika. So can you tell me about, my first question is, tell me your oldest memory you have of your interaction with a Hindu devata from your childhood. We all have some kind of connection to one devata or other. and who is your Ishta, and what made you take up this? I mean, how was your fascination to this understanding lighted up?
Okay, so let me begin with the last question about how I got interested in symbology. For a long time, like my mother introduced me to Gita and Upanishad, and my dad introduced me to temples. He's a big temple lover, and he used to take us to temples regularly. And like as a child, I used to think it used to be, very boring. It's not as interesting as learning philosophy. And then one day in class, Paramarthaji was talking about Dakshina Murti, and he told the symbolism of Chin Mudra. Chin Mudra, all the gods in the form of Guru, like Dakshina Murti and Hayagriva, hold Chin Mudra. And he explained how Chin Mudra pretty much summarizes the entire Vedanta. I'll just briefly tell you. If you see in the hand,
Mhm.
these three fingers are Stula, Shukshma, Karana, Shariram. Body, mind, and intellect, you can take it as that. And this index finger represents the ego, ahankara, because it keeps pointing at everybody. And the thumb represents Ishvara, because without God, you can, the hand, without thumb, just like the hand can't function, without Ishvara, you cannot function. And normally what happens, this ahankara is associated with these sharirams, Stula, Shukshma, Karana, Shariram. And because of that, it is limited. It has beginning and end, a birth and death. But once you understand what you really are, who you really are, your real nature, you dissociate with these three bodies, Stula, Shukshma, Karana, Shariram, and you associate with Ishvara. And when you do that, you are complete. Just like a circle has no beginning and end, you also attain immortality. So all the gurus hold this Chinmudra. He was telling about this, and that's when I really could make a connection. There is no big difference between what we see in temples and what we learn in Gita and Upanishads. All the images of gods are actually a representation of some fundamental concepts in our philosophy. That got me interested in learning more about it. I've read a lot about it, because more I read about it, first it really triggered my interest in temples. I no longer grumbled about going to temples with my dad. Now I visit temples regularly. Going to temples is something which I'm very passionate about. And I learned more and more as I learned more about the symbolism of our Hindu gods. I was fascinated not only by the, by the philosophy hidden in them, but by the brilliance and the artistry of these images. So that's how I have been involved. I have been learning about symbology. And as to how I first got introduced to the gods, what is my first memory of gods? It's been like a childhood thing. I don't even remember at what age I learned my first yoga. My mom and dad we were always, as a family, we were always into prayer and very religious. I come from basically a very religious family. Everybody around me are much more learned than me, so to speak. And my Ishta Devata is Lalita Devi. I chant Lalita Sahasranamam every day.
That is wonderful. Lalita Sahasranama is also among the stotras that is very close to me.
Yeah.
And I especially love the first shloka, Shri Mata, Shri Maharagni, Srimat Simhasaneshwari. Especially Srimat Simhasaneshwari is very, and Chidagni Kunda is what most meaningful, at least Vedantically meaningful term. So,
actually, my favorite is, Antarmukha Samaradhya, Bahirmukha Sudurlabha. You can find her only by looking inside yourself.
I think that the whole Sahasranama is full of such very beautiful ideas, very meaningful ideas. We have on one place it says, I think, Brahmananda Swarupini, if I am not mistaken, and another place it also says Kamarupini. So all this apparently opposite qualities are held by her at the same time and simultaneously, and these should kind of any careful reader and meditator on the verses, I mean it makes them to think that there is something beyond the duality, right? So we are all here to find that what is beyond duality. So coming to this again, I want to go a little more depth into this. You have made videos on Hindu devatas and their symbolism. So what all deities have you explored from a Vedantic perspective? Can you give a your Vedantic perspective on very popular Hindu devatas like Ganapati, Skanda, or Devi forms like Lalita, Kali, etc.
Oh,
for the
it's a, like
benefit
this will
of
take a really long time. Maybe I will from a Veda Ganesha. In fact, no, I didn't learn about Ganesha symbology from any philosophical book. I learned it as a management lesson in one corporate training program. You would be surprised to note, because Ganesha, Gana, Isha, the lord of a group. Ganesha means a leader, and the form of Ganesha embodies all leadership qualities. Like, large ears represent listening skills. A leader should be a good listener. Broad forehead represents intelligence. Small eyes represents concentration. And the trunk of an elephant is very, very significant because it can lift small pins and also uproot huge trees. That should be a range of a leader's vision, the range of leader's skills. And the big stomach represents his ability to digest anything. Whatever shocks the world gives at him, he's able to digest. And the mouse of Ganesha is the most, I think, the best part of Ganesha. Mouse represents our ahankara, ego. And because no, mouse is very destructive, it keeps running around nibbling at everything, right? So a leader's ego should be small and under his control. He cannot be without ego. He has to have belief in himself, but it should not overpower him. You should always keep it small and under his control. So that is the broad symbolism of Ganesha. And then there are many other interpretations also, but this one I love a lot. And then of course there is Ranganatha. Ranganatha lying in his yoga nidra and dreaming of the universe is I think the most concrete representation of the dream analogy of Vedanta, how the whole world is a dream. So Brahma is Hiranyagarbha emerging from Vishnu's sleep. So I think Kali, of course, Kali represents Pralayam. At the time of Pralayam, the naked Kali with wearing that is a very long explanation. In fact, I would request you to look at my video for this, because if I talk about this, it will take forever. We'll not be able to move on to other questions.
we have time. I think that we should not worry about the time. We still, I think, 25 minutes into our session, we have a lot of time. So
Sure.
I want you to take your time and discuss this. Yes.
Yeah, see, even Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, this as in Balavihar I learned. As children, we were taught how Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, God as the creator, preserver, and destroyer, and their consorts, Saraswati, Lakshmi, and Saraswati, Lakshmi, and Kali. So Brahma is the creator. And for creation, what you need most is knowledge, right? Knowledge and skill. So he's married to Saraswati, the goddess of learning. And Vishnu is the preserver. And to maintain anything, to run anything, what you need most is wealth and power and influence, right? So that is, so he's married to Lakshmi, the goddess of prosperity and wealth. And Shiva is the god of destruction. So his wife is Kali. Kali means time. It's derived from Kala. So the time is the biggest destroyer, right? Everything gets destroyed in time. So Shiva's wife is Parvati. Another important significance is, if you see, Lakshmi is the only person sitting at the feet of Vishnu and massaging his feet. All other goddesses have an equal position with their husband. They're equal to their husband. That's because Vishnu is Dharma, represents Dharma, and Lakshmi represents prosperity. Always our pursuit of wealth and prosperity should be subservient to our pursuit of Dharma. So Lakshmi alone is not given an equal status as the other two goddesses.
But I think here, the term equality could be misleading. See, if you can see that Kali is actually is having a superior position. She stands with her feet on the chest of Shiva, right? So I think this equality narrative is kind of misleading. People tend to, I mean, I have heard this lot of modern, what I call uninformed Hindus see the Lakshmi Vishnu imagery is so patriarchal and all those things. But the point is they don't actually understand the essence of the symbology. Because if Lakshmi sitting at the feet of Vishnu is patriarchal, what should we say? Kali standing on the chest of Shiva, right?
Shiva, yeah.
So I think
That's
this,
true.
should not mix up Western frameworks that we have learned in the modern times with our own philosophy. But what I find fascinating is, in the Puranas, in the Ganesh Purana, I have read this story wherein, at the beginning of creation, when Brahma did not know how to create, or and after creation, he was little bit egoistic. See, I have created such a big world. So Ganesha asks Brahma to go inside his stomach, the big stomach. And inside his stomach, Brahma sees hundreds of Brahmandas, like the one he created, with each Brahmanda having its own Brahma. So you were speaking about the big stomach, na? So this Lambodara, so this Purana says this Lambodara is it represents the Brahman, the Satchidananda Brahman, the Ananta part, Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma. Ananta, infinite, it has infinite number of universes inside his stomach. I think I find from my very childhood, I have been attracted to Ganapati as as a brother, as a friend. But my Ishta is Kali, so I had written on Kali as well, and so that's why I was fascinated to listen to you about Kali. I think these are all very fascinating stuff. But I think a caveat needs to be added. Tell me if you agree or not that when we speak about symbology of deity, Vedantic symbology, or even otherwise, some people may get the impression that our deities are merely symbols, merely a representation of some ideas or some concepts, but they do not have a reality on their own. I think that will be a misleading conclusion, because I believe our shastras are very clear that the devatas are real. They are not just some abstract principles. They are real. I mean, if they are not real, then there would be no meaning to have a temple, or which is a, Devalaya is a alaya, it's a home, it's a abode of the deity. We do the prana pratishtapana, invoke them, right? So what do you think about this?
Yeah, absolutely. Devatas, just like, our body is Jadam and there is consciousness principle behind our body which makes it function. Similarly, all the functions in the universe are backed by a consciousness principle which makes it happen. So that consciousness principle is which are the different deities. Aditya is a deity. There is, we don't look at Aditya as just that, the ball of fire, the Jadam, but also the consciousness principle which drives it. So that is Devata. From what I learned in Advaita, all the like Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva are padavis which you can obtain with lot of austerities. But they are the consciousness principles which drive the functioning of the universe.
Yes, I think this is very important to highlight. Because nowadays, it's very cool to kind of Abrahamize Hindu practices. I mean, that is what is happening. If you see everywhere, that we try to rethink about our deities in the sense of a monotheistic way, and that is, I think, hugely problematic and leads to a lot of issues. Uh, Before moving on to the very juicy part of our interview, which is your, interpretation of Matrix and other movies, which I am looking forward to, I want to bring in some other aspects, at least one or two questions. Uh, you are aware of the current lot of issues that is happening in Hindu society, that like there are a lot of intellectual attacks on our philosophy, and there is a Shabarimala is happening and all these things happening. So what do you think a common Hindu should do? How should we preserve our culture, our heritage, our dharma, so to speak? And what do you see is the role of Vedanta in providing a proper in making the people equipped to deal with these um, kind of attacks, so to speak, or kind of challenges that we are facing in modern times?
Okay, so I think first of all, I have to humbly say that there are people who are much more learned than me who have to give a right answer to this question. I can only tell what my opinion is or my experience with this has been. I think the only way we can protect our religion or protect our culture is by learning about it properly. You know, unlike most Abrahamic religions, our philosophy and our texts are not simple. It requires years of study to understand and grasp their significance. If you look at things in a superficial manner, you will think a lot of things are wrong, a lot of things are contradictory. So if you have to comment about, let's say, if you're comment about medicine, you're required to be a qualified doctor. But if you have to comment about our philosophy, no qualification is required. Everybody seems to be an expert on this subject. But at the same time, I also want to share my experience on with my blog. You know, I used to have a blog called Symbology in Cognizant, and it used to attract that like a lot of people used to read it and comment about it. And not everybody were people who agreed with our philosophy or agreed with my interpretation or agreed with what our culture says. But listening to that point of view, it was mostly a respectful conversation because it was within our corporate atmosphere, no? So, but listening to these varied point of views, I thought helped me get a better understanding of our own scriptures. Or till that time, I had only heard from people who were totally bought into our philosophy and who understood, who believed in it completely. But getting the perspective of people who did not have belief gave me a lot of insights and gave me a better understanding. I more clarity on about my own understanding of our scriptures. So I think we should not be afraid of people, contradicting us, because we have a culture of tarka. You know, all the time, from our Upanishads, it's been a question and answer. It's never a monologue. Here are a set of things you should follow. Shraddha comes into place only. You have to have Shraddha, but it comes into a place until you get understanding. And I don't think we can get understanding without tarka. So it's okay if people say, as long as it's in a respectful environment. And I somehow feel there is a resurgence of pride in our culture with a growth of our economy and with a lot of people traveling the world and understanding the uniqueness and beauty of our culture. I feel there is a resurgence from my childhood days to now. It is like everybody, there's a lot of pride in our culture and religion. And I think that's a really good thing.
Wonderful. Modern life, the kind of urban, fast-paced life that we are all leading, especially corporate field. Previously I was in a construction field, and I have seen that especially the corporate life is kind of a rat race. Everybody is trying to get somewhere. Nobody knows where that destination is, but everybody is fighting, pulling others down, pushing others. And so this kind of very stressful environment, uh, people don't have time to think about anything else. They're working from 8 a.m. in the morning to 10 p.m. in the night, or 12 a.m. in the night, and they don't even have time for their family. They're completely stressful in such a fast-paced, fast-moving life. How do you think Vedanta can be very helpful to them, and how such people can actually uh, imbibe the teachings of Vedanta in their life to some extent, some way, so that it could be helpful to them?
Actually, I think all these stresses and pulls is helping people become more spiritual. Like you think the, generally all the suffering and the heartaches which Maya throws at us, which samsara creates, is actually it inspires us to become more spiritual. There is a great, I think, movement towards meditation. If not Vedanta, I think everybody has now understood meditation as something mainstream. Living in the present, being able to focus and keep your your thoughts in control. And I think it's a journey, Nitinji. If you remember a few generations back, before people like Chinmayaji and all brought Vedanta to the mainstream, it was only taught to sannyasis and people who had given up this life. I don't think Vedanta was ever meant to be a mainstream thing where everybody can talk about it and everybody is supposed to learn it. I think a more useful thing to learn would be Gita, because Gita has also Vedanta, but also has how you deal with how to deal with Vedanta in day-to-day life. Like if you want help, if you're struggling with something, you can always remember a sloka from Gita, right? There is so much relevance, and it is addressed to Arjuna also, who is a samsari himself. So that is for me personally, Gita has helped a lot.
Wonderful. That is true. Gita has all these important lessons on karma yoga and nishkam karma and bhakti. So these are all and dharma acharana, swadharma acharana and all those things. So I think these are all more relevant to large number of people. But I think the only thing is Vedanta helps in a sense, the Vedantic vision, as you say, that the world is an illusion and there is the Atma is the only real. This vision helps one to keep oneself rooted. And it kind of provides the ultimate goal that we need to walk towards. Whereas the other teachings of dharma and bhakti and karma and all these things are tools that helps us to, mechanisms through which helps us to reach there. So we have one question from the audience. I will take it up now because we were speaking about corporate world. Sriram Ravichandran ji asks that you have worn many hats and from corporate, you were in corporate and now you have just left corporate field. So he's asking, how you managed to shift from a corporate to non-corporate area? Are there any big moments that signal to you that you should move out or do something else, or was it evolutionary process for you personally? What made you kind of this change that made you take this decision that you need a change now?
Okay. See, it was an evolutionary process. I think when I started Cognizant, I never thought I will quit Cognizant itself, because I used to love my job, and I did love my job till the very end. But the important thing for me is throughout I had other interests. Before I joined a corporate life, from my school days, I had exposure to this this philosophy, and I think I'm really privileged to have had the exposure at such a young age and have had a guru who was such a fantastic teacher and a very knowledgeable man, and who could really, all the things that I learned just by listening to him. So that's a blessing. So that was always with me. And I think in my corporate life itself, I kept on learning different things, So I never felt that I used to do writing and blogging and learn different things in my corporate world. So when I step out, many people, when they want to step out of their corporate life, it's like a hard stop. They don't know what to do next. But I never had that question, because I always knew I wanted to do something else, and there is something else I would pursue. So your identity is so linked with a corporate job. Like, what would I do without my job? What would I be without my job? That is, I think, for many people, that's the question, rather than a financial constraint or other constraints. It's like it's almost like a loss of identity. So it's important that you keep your other interests alive and going. So you can seamlessly leave this and transition to those things.
Wonderful. That is true. Uh, So let me ask you the big question that I want to listen and answer personally. So you have done this a series of videos on YouTube on uh, the the famous movie Matrix, and you have explored the embedded Vedantic symbolism in the movie and its characters, right? I don't know whether the movie makers had any direct Vedantic exposure or how they come upon this idea. I don't know whether you know, to please share. But I think I find it fascinating that when I first watched the movie, I remember, I think I was in school or college, I believe. I don't remember the year, but it was a very fascinating thing. And it, I think lot of Hindus who were, all those people who have even slightly exposed to Hindu philosophy can easily connect to it, the notion of the whole world being, an
Maya.
appearance, and yeah, and the truth being something different. Though I think that even the movie, which is a product of Western culture, I would say, it reduces everything to a kind of a materialistic thing, even thus that there is a robots creating this Maya, but still the concept is very fascinating. So can you please share more about this, uh, the kind of Vedantic principles that you could interpret the Matrix movie and the characters. You said that each character represents a different principle, right? Neo and Morpheus and Trinity and all those people. So I can be as detailed as possible. I would not say as brief. I want it to be as detailed as possible, so that this is a very good intellectual exercise. I think when we keep consuming lot of content, video content and reading and all those things, it's good to try to interpret it in our own philosophical perspective, so that it gives it keeps the mind sharp. And these could be props to understand our own philosophy better. To some people, some people use arts as props, some people use some other techniques as props to understand philosophy. Yeah.
So, first of all, let me tell you how I watched the movie. Actually, I did not watch the movie when it was released because they told me it is the movie with a lot of special effects and martial arts, both of which was not of interest to me. Then another friend of mine, who's also a student of Vedanta, said you should watch this, Archana. It's Vedanta. The whole movie is only Vedanta. And in fact, he quoted a verse from Gita also. Nainam Chindanti Shastrani, Nainam Dahati Pavakaha, about when you describe the Atma, how it cannot be hurt by a weapon, it cannot be made wet by the water, or the wind cannot dry it. So he said, if you look at it, you will know that it is Vedanta. I thought, I couldn't believe it. I said, how can a movie, a martial art movie, a science fiction movie, have anything to do with Vedanta? But when I was watching the movie, as I was watching it, I could actually remember verses from Upanishad, like Parikshalo, Kan, Karma, Chitan, Brahmano. You have seen the movie, right? You can actually remember when he gives the two pills. You can remember the Shreyascha, Preyascha, Manushya Meta, Katopanishad, Slokas, Duramete, Viparite, Vishuchi. So I thought it's not like, some things incidentally look like they are Vedanta, but this looked like a conscious representation of Vedanta to me. I didn't think that that the makers had anything else in mind other than Vedanta. And it was all the more reiterated in the end of the third movie. It's a trilogy. The end of the third movie, it ends with the verse from the Vedantic verse, Asatoma Sadgamaya Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya. The last movie ends, the credits roll to this verse, Asatoma Sadgamaya
Is it?
Tamasoma
Oh,
Jyotirgamaya. Yeah.
I hadn't
So,
noticed this.
yes, the end of the movie. So I thought, then I started writing this blog on symbology. I said, as part of that, I wrote about Matrix and Vedanta. When I watched the movie, I could generally guess Matrix is Maya, Morpheus is Guru, all that I could understand. But as I started writing about it, I watched it over and over and again, and I kind of concretized my thoughts. You know, it was like breaking a puzzle, like solving a puzzle. I really, it was very intellectually very gratifying. So I just enjoyed the whole process. And now I'm doing a video series because in writing, you can only convey so much, right? So I wanted to do a more elaborate series on YouTube. So
Okay, wonderful. This one, yeah. Can you give a nuggets about how as Trinity,
Okay, I couldn't hear you fully. You want me to talk about specific characters, right?
Yes,
Neo,
yes.
Morpheus, yeah. See, if you take Neo, for those of you who have not watched a movie, the movie is about this protagonist Neo, who's a computer hacker, whose main job is to hack computers, and with the help of Morpheus and Trinity, two other characters, he comes to realize that he's living in a virtual reality. That is, missions, artificial intelligence has taken over the world, and they have created this artificial world with the help of a computer program and plugged all human beings into this computer program. So while they are lying unconscious in a pod, they are in their mind, they're actually living a life. They're growing up, getting married, having a job, having children. So Morpheus and Trinity help Neo escape the Matrix. So the whole story is about how Neo escapes the Matrix. So I think those of you who know about Vedanta, the first thing that will strike you about Matrix is how the whole world is an illusion. You're living in a world and you think it is a real world, but it's an illusion, and how hard it is to comprehend it, right? So this whole world of Maya is represented as a computer program in which we are all living, not realizing that this is not the real world. So that is the Matrix itself. And then there is the whole story is a story of a seeker. How if you want to get Atma Jnanam, if you want to get Mukti, what is the journey you would take to get Mukti? First is you do this Pariksha Lokan, Karmachitan Brahmana. You think, you examine the world deeply and you realize that there is something wrong with the world. So that's what Neo realizes. Throughout, he knows something is wrong with the world. So what is wrong with the world, he's not able to figure out. And then Trinity tells him, see, I know you are you are struggling with this question. You're exploring deeper and deeper to understand what is wrong with the world. Now you ask the question, what is your question? Because it is the question which will drive you to the answer. So even in Upanishads, that's it, right? Every Upanishad begins with a question. And so he asks, what is Matrix? It's as good as asking, what is samsara? What is Maya? And Trinity takes him to Morpheus. And Morpheus tells him, Morpheus is the person who tells him, this world is an illusion. So he gives him, I think one of the most iconic scene for me, the scene which helped me understand that this is Vedanta, is where he offers two pills. He gives two tablets to Neo and he says, see, this is, you have to make a choice. There's no going back after this. If you take this blue pill, you will go back to your life. But if you take this red pill, you will continue in your search. You'll be able to understand what is the world we are living in. And he takes the red pill. So that is a choice which is offered to every seeker, right? Every person who wants to pursue liberation. You cannot have both. You cannot have both the samsara and the world of Maya and also find liberation. You will have to make a choice between both. Duramete viparite vishuchi, also another Upanishadic verse I remembered there, and he takes the blue pill. So who is Morpheus? Morpheus is a guru. It's guru who tells us this world is an illusion and leads us out of this illusion, right? And there are also characters called agents, and their job is to keep you entrapped in the matrix, to prevent you from escaping the matrix. And I think the agents are one of the most fascinating characters, like how it's a very abstract Vedantic concept which is represented in agents. Now, why do we recommend sannyasa for people who are seeking liberation? It's because everything in the world is a distraction, right? It prevents you from getting out of samsara, attachments, then your job, your career, money, children, all of them hold you back, keep you stuck in this world of Maya. So if you really want to get out, you need to escape all of them. So agents are represented as, as very virulent programs. What they do is they can occupy anything in the matrix. So any person or anything in the matrix, an agent can take over. And these agents are so powerful that they will prevent you from escaping. They will stop you from escaping. They can keep you entrapped in the matrix. So it's actually agents are all the worldly distractions are represented as an agent, and throughout, the way there is a scene in the movie where they explain who these agents are, where the guru explains they are everyone and they are no one. And if you are not a seeker, you are everything else in this world is a agent for you. It's capable of stopping you from escaping the matrix. And they also plant bugs into a seeker. Anybody who wants to escape, they plant bugs. They actually show a physical robotic bug which they plant in Neo. And I feel it is Arishad Varga, Kama, Krodha, Lobha, Moha, Mada, Matsaryam. So you have all this, you will be too distracted to seek liberation, right? Your mind will not be fertile enough and prepared enough to seek liberation. So all those is captured in the representation of the agents. And once you get, once you do your Nididhyasanam and you are free, you're truly free, your mind is free of all habitual thinking, then you're no longer, none of these things affect you after that. So in the end scene of the movie, Neo sees these agents and he sees them only as green characters in the computer screen. He sees them only as computer programs, not as these frightening things which will destroy him. And once he's able to see that, they no longer have any power over him. Even if they shoot bullets at him, he's able to, fend them off. He's able to defeat them easily. And that's showing he has become the one. He's become liberated.
Wonderful. I think this concept of agents as Arishad Varga, I never thought in that way, but it makes a lot of sense, The other name for Arishad Varga is Ashtapasha, In the Tantric text, we have this Ashtapasha, this bondage. Pasha is, bondage, right? So, what you said, it's completely matches there. So we have one question from one of our audience. He says, did you have a formal schooling in Sanskrit? How important do you think that knowledge of Sanskrit is to study Indian philosophy?
See, formally, I learned Sanskrit from for 2 years. My cousin sister is a Sanskrit teacher. I learned for 2 years, but that was after I had after many years into adulthood. As a child, because I was constantly exposed to slokas and learning, understanding slokas, I had a broad grasp of Sanskrit, but not a deeper, the kind of grasp which Sanskrit scholars have, I do not have. I can understand meanings of certain words which commonly appear in our texts and all that. And I do feel that if you're a serious student of Vedanta, it's good to learn Sanskrit formally and properly, because a lot of our texts make better sense if you're able to read them in the original, right, in their original text. But I am not so well versed in the sense I learned it, and I have exposure to Sanskrit because of learning of all these slokas and these texts from childhood.
Okay. So are you thinking of, doing this Vedantic interpretation for other movies as well? For example, I have been fascinating with the Star Wars series. I mean, I especially I find the concept of force fascinating. I don't know, you have watched the series? You have?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
So I
even
think
I
it is
found
conceptually
force.
very close to. I found it very close to Hindu concept of Vayu or Prana or Sutratman. So what is your take on that?
Yeah, the thing is, there was many movies, Nitinji. You can see there are certain places which kind of feel like they are Vedantic. May the force be with you. I always thought of force as this all-pervading consciousness principle which is there in the whole universe. So that is how I thought of force. But in the sense, the entire package of end-to-end Vedanta I found only in Matrix. I have to now go through other movies. Maybe another movie called Inception. I don't know whether you have seen. So it's a movie where they have this ability to plant dreams in other people's mind. And you can get into a person's dream and manipulate their whole mind. That I thought had some, some Vedantic connotations. I don't know whether you've seen that, you watched that movie called Inception.
I haven't. I have heard of the movie a lot, but I'm yet to watch it. So we are almost towards the end of our session. I have just 2-3 more questions. Before we started with the session, you were speaking about your interest in exploring science and Vedanta, and how they converge or diverge. And so I wanted to know about what are your thoughts. Do you perceive science and Vedanta as two never meeting parallel lines, or as perhaps intersecting circles with common areas of interest?
Actually, Nitinji, while my parents introduced me to religion and spirituality, I could actually experience, feel the presence of God only in science. When I learned science and understood science, I feel science, especially physics, I found that there are so many things which you can draw parallels to Vedanta. And now I think with the emergence of quantum physics, it has it has brought the consciousness to the center of science. See, while classical physics has many parallels, for example, if you take Big Bang, the whole universe has emerged from a particle in a region less than the size of an atom. From that, the whole universe emerged. And if you remember Chandogya Upanishad, there is a story, right? The guru tells the student, go get that fruit of the banyan tree. And he says, cut open the fruit. And then he says, what do you see inside? You see a seed. Then he said, you cut open the seed. What do you see inside? And the student says, I see nothing. And he says, see, where you thought there was nothing, this huge banyan tree exists. So from the Big Bang, like whole universe emerging from such a tiny region feels like that, right? It feels like a parallel to that Chandogya Upanishad story. But for me, I think one thing which I thought science, Vedanta and science will never meet is consciousness. Consciousness is an exclusive premise of Vedanta and science will never get there. But with the emergence of quantum physics, I think it has made observer, the Sakshi, the center of science. If you take the double slit experiment, it's a very famous experiment in quantum physics. I won't explain the experiment, but I'll tell you what it concludes. That is, a particle behaves like a particle only when you observe it. When you don't observe it, it behaves like a wave. And even if you do the observation post the experiment, you do the observation, even then it's as though the particle knows you're going to observe it and it behaves like a particle. And then I read a book called Biocentrism. Biocentrism is written by a scientist called Robert Lanza. And there he asked the question, would the world exist if there was no observer? Would the universe exist if there was no observer? And he analyzes using quantum physics. He comes to the conclusion that the whole universe will be in a state of quantum flux. It will never have a concrete shape and form without an observer. This is his conclusion. I strongly recommend you read that book. It's a fascinating book. And when I read it, I was reminded of Brahman as being the Sakshi Chaitanyam. It's Brahman is Akarta, Bhokta, but in his presence, the whole universe emerges. This is from Maya. And you always wonder, how can an Akarta, Bhokta create the universe? And it is pretty much, physics also seems to be coming to the a similar line. I feel with the emergence of quantum physics, there is a lot more, it has really created a new paradigm of how consciousness, uncertainty principle, if you look at it, we say Maya is anirvachaniyam. You cannot say whether it is this or that, Sangha or Asangha, whether it's part or not a part of it, whether it is, it is impossible at a fundamental level to say what Maya really is. It is anirvachaniyam, and that is exactly, I think, what uncertainty principle says. You can never know what it is really at a fundamental level. So I think There is a lot of convergence now. And I have to tell you, as I told you, I always felt that the presence of God in science. I was remembering in my school, 8th standard or something, science class, my teacher was explaining a property of water, how water is densest when it's 4 degrees centigrade. When it's 0 degrees centigrade, it is lighter. In solid state, it is lighter, which is now no other substance is lighter in solid state. So that's why ice floats on water. And because of that, what happens in cold regions like Arctic and all, the top layer of the ocean freezes over. And the bottom layer is still warm at 4 degrees because ice is an insulator. Because of that, all the creatures, all the oceanic creatures are able to live through the winter because this frozen ice keeps the creatures below warm. And when I heard this as a child, I still remember listening to this in the school and thinking, you know, my Ishta Devata is Lalita Devi, and I always think of God as mother. And it felt like a real, you know, example of how a mother would protect their children, right? So I think it is very, I don't understand when people say science and philosophy, science and religion contradict each other. I feel they are just two ends of the spectrum, approaching the same subject from different points of view.
That is wonderful perspective. I think that vivekam is missing among a lot of people. To reconcile the differences. I think there is, yes, as you said, there is one area where science and Vedanta can never meet. It is in the fact that science is kind of outward looking, in the sense of it is materialistic in its approach. Though, yeah, as you pointed out, the quantum mechanics and all, they are making a lot of progress with observer and all that, but still I think they're still very, very far away from the Vedantic position of non-duality, because non-duality goes a step further and it says it goes beyond the duality of observer and the observed, right? The duality of subject and the object. So it is very fantastic. I think we can have these conversations throughout the day and it will never end. But we have come to the conclusion of today's session, and it was very wonderful. It was very fascinating, Archana ji, to discuss all this with you. So thank you again for coming on our show, and hopefully we will have you again after some months or sometime, some other time, on to discuss again on some other interesting issue. Thank you.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you so much, Nitinji. It's a pleasure to be here. Such an honor to be invited for this conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Listeners, don't forget to tune in to today's session in the evening at 4:30 p.m. The second part of Weekend with Wisdom with Swamini Brahma Pragyananda Saraswati ji. So with this, we come to the end of the session. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha.